Okay. Hey, how's it going? So, we are live apparently. If you're new here, today we're going to be doing a little bit different thing than what we normally do. Normally we'll have sort of a format to this. Today we're just going to be doing a live mix session. So if this is your first time here, I want to let you know that this channel exists to simplify the complexities of the home studio and to help you make professional sounding music in a less than professional space. Today is going to be no exception. We're going to be diving into a mix and mixing it right here live before your very eyes. So if you have questions while I'm doing these mixing decisions, it'll be a great time for you to ask and get answers to your questions live. The song that we're going to be working on is a song that's called The Other Side of Sound by Mark George. He recently just won the HSS Song Contest, the August edition. Yeah, I'll get it right here in a minute. So, hey, looks like Country T and Mark is already here. Good to see you guys. So we are going to be diving into this mix today, and literally the only thing that I have done to this is pulled it into my session, and as you can see it here, and just basically color-coded things and rearrange them in a way that makes sense to me. So basically, if you've ever watched any of these videos before, then you'll know that I have a certain way that I like to arrange my tracks. Typically speaking, that's with the vocals at the top, and then I work my way down. Electric guitar area here. Here is the acoustic guitar area. I always color it brown. Ukulele is a little bit lighter version of brown, and I'll remove my mug from off of here. Then the contact and the organ settings here are a lighter purple. Bass is always purple. And then these FX are like a darker color. And I've got them a couple of different colors just to differentiate from those. And then drums are always gray. So that's it laid out in a nutshell. There's absolutely no processing that's been done on these tracks whatsoever. So we are literally starting from scratch in hopes that what is done here today, you'll be able to learn from. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the console view first. And I'm going to do this because I want to make sure, yes, so all of the gain knobs are set to unity and all of the faders are set to unity as well. As you can see, there's no processing being done here. And now the only other thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and set up my buses area in a way that I normally do that makes sense to me. Now, normally I would already have a template. I love using templates. And normally I would already be using a template, have this already pulled up, and I would have these buses already set out in the way that I like them. However, because I wanted to showcase exactly what I would do at the start of a mix if I was you, say for instance, and didn't have access to that template, then this is just how I would do it. So before we even get started on this, though, I have to preface and say, what's up, X.E.L. Oh. So before I even start this, though, I need to preface this by saying, too, yes, Mark, this is just the raw sounds of what what you recorded. So completely raw tracks as of right now. And all I've done is, because you sent me a frozen bun file, I just simply, because they were frozen, just exported them as multi-tracks and then imported them into this project here. So I very well could have done it from the bun project itself, but this will actually give me a little bit more of a representation of kind of like how I would start a mix if I was starting fresh, just to let you guys know. So now in the bus list panel here, the first thing that I'm going to do is I've got a master bus and I've got my preview bus. I don't really need the excuse me, I don't really need the preview bus, just for the sake that I probably won't be using any extra accentuation to this. And if I do, I can always preview that through the master bus if I need to. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this. And I'm going to insert a new stereo bus, and I'm going to call this reverb, because I love reverb. I'm going to call this reverb short, and I'm going to misspell short. I smart. And then I'm going to insert a new stereo bus here. I'm going to call this one reverb medium. I'll just say med for short, because I'm trendy like that. Reverb long. And there we go. Okay, so I want to explain this process because every time I do this, people ask me, why do you have 3 different reverb buses? So I wish I had a whiteboard I could pull up here, and I'd show you kind of like what I'm going for. I'm actually looking because where I just signed up for school, I think I actually do have a whiteboard somewhere on here. Let's see. Maybe not. Okay, forget it. I do know I have paint though, and I can use paint. Okay. Mark, you're crazy. So here's the whiteboard we're going to be using. And I'm basically just using this just to demonstrate real quickly exactly what I'm using these 3 reverbs for. So let's say, just for instance, this is your typical room right here. And let's say that you are going to check out a band, and this is the stage where the band is. And these are the PA speakers, massive PA speakers that you're listening to the band on. These will be disproportionate, and my OCD will be going crazy because they're not proportionate, but that's fine. I'm not going to have to deal with it because I'm actually just, you know what? I'm actually just going to go in here and delete this one. And then I'm going to go in here and copy this one and paste a new one. And now they're proportionate. Oh yeah, OCD is fine. Okay, so with that being said, oh hey, how's it going, Randall? He's got a wee dogs, he says. Okay, so let's just say, like, for instance, that you're at this concert, and I'm going to use the color red to sort of signify reverb in this instance. So by having a short, medium, and a long reverb, what I'm going to do is try to simulate a larger area here with those. So if your PA speakers are here, you're going to have some waveforms or sound pressure waves, if you want to call them SPL, that's going to be bouncing against the wall here and is going to be hitting you here if you're in the audience. Okay. Let's assume that you got good seats and you're close to the... All right. So then you're also going to have some that's going to be going directly to your ears here. Okay. And then you're going to have guitar amps that's coming here. And then you're also going to have some that's hitting this back wall. And then after it hits that back wall, it's going to be hitting you here. So I think you can kind of see where I'm going with this. So, and then let's pretend that this is wee little you. Okay. So what's up, Keith? No lava lamp yet. Sorry. So we're going to pretend that this here is you, this little blue dot, because you're feeling blue, and that these red lines here are reflections that's coming from these PA speakers, and this is the stage where the band is performing that I just turned blue for some reason. Okay? So in this instance, what you have is you have short reverbs. And this is going to get crazy because I can't, this isn't, I'll just use a pen. Okay, so you're going to have these short reverbs here that's moving very quickly to your ears. you're going to have these medium reverbs here that are moving from the speaker, bouncing off the walls to your ears. And then you're going to have these long reverbs here that are bouncing off the wall and eventually making it back to your ears from here. Okay? So with all that being said, what I'm essentially trying to do when I work with 3 different reverb buses is I'm creating that space like that would be if you were in a live setting. So with that being said, that's why I use 3 different reverbs. And I will send some things to all 3. Sometimes I'll send some things just to 1. It just depends on how I'm feeling, or what I think is going to affect the sound in the most pleasurable way. So I'm going to leave these at Unity as of right now. And I am going to go ahead and insert my first instances of plugins here. And that's going to pop up with an error because it's been doing that lately. And that's going to be, I'm just going to go ahead and use stock plugins, by the way. This way, if you guys don't have the plugins that I'm using, then you should still be able to get roughly the same results. So I'm going to use the Sonitus FX Reverb, which in its own right is actually a pretty good reverb. So now there are presets here. And as you can see, we've already got short and sweet. We've got a large haul. And then we've got something that's sort of in between. So I'm just going to go ahead and I would think that the drum room would probably be the in between. So I'm going to start right here with just the short and sweet. I'm going to leave the tail on, leave the width at 100%. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go to okay. I'm going to go to the website and I'm going to go to my reverb/delay calculator, which is going to open up an ad. That was weird. That wasn't supposed to happen. Weird. Now I see what you guys are seeing whenever you go to my website. It's all spammy. That's not cool. All right. So anyway, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out the BPMs of the song itself. So let's hop back over here and just real roughly. Now it says 120, but that's just simply because I flew it into this session here as it stands. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead to this drum track. And I'm going to insert a tool on here. The Hornet Song Key. This is not only going to tell me the chord of something, the key of something, but it's also going to clue me in as to the BPMs. So I'm going to go ahead and play this out real quickly. And it's going to tell me that for some reason. And I think that's because my master bus is not set up. This is what happens when you're so used to using the templates that you normally use. And then you have to switch to something else. Everything's not routed the way that it should be. Okay, that should be playing. That's not cool. Okay. Let's see here. This is why you gotta love live stuff here. Yes, this would be done with 3D graphics if the lava lamp was in place. Okay. Now I'm going to switch back to... Sometimes I've ran into this before because the screen recording software wants to take over everything, and then Cakewalk says, no, I'm taking over everything, and then you've got this. Okay, so I'm going to switch back to MME, which seems to work for me. I'm a poet and just don't know it. And it's going to tell me that again. That's awesome. Okay, let's see here. What do we got to do? Audio output, that's set right. Yep. We're just going to close the project, try to reopen it and see if that helps. I'm not sure why it's doing this. It was playing just fine a minute ago, but anytime you go live, of course, there's going to be this happen. Yep, all right. Well, You piece of junk, I'll tell you what. Why, I oughta. Okay, that's really cool. I'm glad that it's doing this. Let's see here. Everything looks as if it's set up all right. Let's run the wave profiler. Sometimes that works. Nope, didn't work. Okay, that's great. Okay, let's try to close the entire program, bring it back up. That's funny because this was literally playing like right before. So, yeah, man, it's going to do it again. Okay, that's awesome. Well, let's go back to the old drawing board here. Let's try to go with some ISO, or Audio, whatever people like to call it. Okay, that's wonderful. Nice. And now the very thing that I'm using to record this with, or play back, is not even showing up. That's cool. Well, gotta love it when this stuff happens. By the way, I appreciate your all's patience. Yeah, I don't even think, I appreciate that, Mark, but I don't think that would even help, because if I can't get it to play, it's not going to help at all. Okay. No, that's not supposed to be there. Let's go back to here, maybe. That's where it's supposed to be coming from. So hopefully this will work. Yeah, that's okay. Go ahead and take your sweet little time. Yeah, that's fine. No, we're not in a hurry here. I got all day for you, little blue dot. Yeah, there we go. All right, we got some sound all of a sudden. Okay. So thank you for telling me, by the way, it was 80 BPMs, but I am going to still try to go ahead and use this just because that's what I was intending to do in the first place. So, and it might be wrong. This might be wrong, I mean. interesting. $80 BPMs. I'm going to go with that because this isn't telling me much of anything. That stupid thing popping up every 5 minutes. Go away. All right. We're going to assume then that it truly is 80 BPMs because I would assume that the person who wrote the song probably knows. So, yeah, the drum track told me it was 130. So, at any rate, what we're going to do here is we're going to go with the 130 BPMs. That's going to tell us here on my reverb/delay calculator that a quarter note will have a duration of 461.5 milliseconds. We're going to round up to 462. Okay. So we'll go back here to our reverb buses that we so horribly got sidetracked on a minute ago. And for this here, we have our room size. You can see here's the pre-delay. That's in milliseconds. And then you got your crossover, your decay time. What we're going to go with is the decay time. We're not going to worry so much about pre-delay. We're actually going to set that down to about 20 milliseconds. Or 30 sounds great. And then for this, we know that, let's see, 462 was the number. So now I'm going to open up a calculator, wherever that went. And I'm going to divide that by 2. So 231 milliseconds is going to be my decay time. So 0.2 milliseconds. That's because this is the short. Gotcha. Okay. Now I'm going to use the, excuse me. Now I'm going to insert another reverb here. And on this one, we're going to use the, where was it? Drum. Thought there was one that just said, oh, that's why. Oops. Drum room. So this should be sort of a medium reverb here. And it's already set pretty close to where it needs to be. So we're going to set it to, 0.452. There we go. There's our medium. Okay, and then we're going to go to our reverb times on this one here, preset. I'm going to preset it to a large haul. Okay, bring up the old calcy boo again. 462 times 2 for a whopping 924. That's almost a full millisecond, we'll just say. Or a full second, I should say. All right, so that's how we're going to calculate what is the short, medium, and long reverb times. Good night, Irene. Frog jumped in my throat. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to highlight each one of these buses and turn on the Pro channel to make sure that that's active. We're going to open up the Pro channel on each one of these and make sure that we have the same plugins on all of them, just for aesthetic reasons. All right, so what I'm doing is I'm removing everything that doesn't need to be on there. And I'm going to go ahead and add console B for the bus channel. So they all have turning on the console emulation on all of the buses. And then with the reverbs, I'm going to make sure that all of them are turned on, or EQs, sorry. And then on the EQ bus, EQ for the reverb bus, I'm going to set a high pass filter at about 250 close to it, and a low pass at about 3K. And then I'm going to click over here, hold the control button, and just simply click and drag that over to the others. That will effectively allow me to EQ all of the reverbs essentially the same. Last but not least, insert a last stereo bus for, I'm going to call it SATI, because yet again, I'm so hip with these young people these days. I'm going to go ahead and copy over the same EQ curve here. Remove that module and leave the tube module in on this one. And we're going to drive it to full capacity. So Keith says, now, is it better to route to the 3 reverbs into one bus and have the console be on that? It's the kind of thing that keeps me awake at night. I would almost just leave that a mystery so you would just stay awake at night. No. I mean, essentially, yeah, you could do that as well. But this way you have more control. I'm a control freak. So this way you have more control over... Actually, I'm going to take that tube emulation off, and I'm going to use my favorite, the soft tube saturation knob, and turn it up about halfway. Now, there's also some debate as to whether or not, Keith, there's also some debate as to whether or not the console should be at the top of the strip or at the bottom of the strip. I've covered this in my in-depth Pro Channel tutorial, so I'm not going to cover it here, but basically, it's really just a matter of taste. It's subjective. So wherever you want to put it, wherever you think it sounds best. I personally always keep mine at the bottom because that way everything preceding it will run through it. Some people want to have it at the top so that everything runs through it and then through this. And they claim that that's how a console would be laid out anyway. So, however, my console is backwards because my whole world is backwards, especially right now. And then on the master bus, I'm just going to go ahead and go down to 20 hertz and go ahead and high pass that, simply because I know I'm not a dog and I can't hear it. And I'm also going to go up to 20,000 kilohertz and low pass that as well. So that's already taken care of on the master bus. All right, so far I have got my reverb short, medium, and longs, my SATI channel, also known as saturation. And that's, as of right now, that's going to be all of the buses that I'm going to have to route things to. All right, so now we're going to move on to the next portion of this, and that's going to be, which if you have not checked out my 15-step mix process, I do have a link in the description of this video where you can go and download that for free, and we will actually be using that today. So I'm going to actually pull that up now. I'm just warning you guys, this is probably going to be a little bit longer video today because literally I wanted to purposely start from scratch so that you could see literally everything that's going into this. So that way I'm not just pulling up something and I'm like, poof, hey, look, I've already got everything's labeled, named, it's halfway mixed, and I'm going to mix it live even though it's already halfway mixed. I'm literally going to show you like from the ground up what I'm doing here. So if you have not checked it out, this is what it looks like. Now, my 15-step mix process does not have to be your 15-step mix process. This is just what I do. I love working by templates. I love working from starting points. This allows me to sort of quail the ADD that I have of bouncing all over the place, and allows me to say, okay, here's a defined path, a goal that I need to take. And so this 15-step mixing process, and it probably could be a lot less steps. Just this is what works for me. And 15 is a good number anyway. So step number 1 is to import all the tracks into your DAW of choice. And then I have the link for Cakewalk by BandLab. Name every track that doesn't fit into the pre-named slot within my template, which I'm not using my template, so that's fine. All the tracks were already named when I used the bun file that Mark had sent me. So really all I had to do was just export them. They export as named files and then import them, and Cakewalk automatically gives them the name on the track that the name of the file was. So everything was good there. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is make sure that all of them are color coordinated and they have track icons. I'm not going to worry so much about the track icons right now. I do want to not make this so taxing on you guys, but I have already color coded them. That's the one thing that I did do beforehand to just sort of speed up this process just a little bit. I've done no mixing though whatsoever. So with all that aside, that was step number 3. Now step number 4 is we're going to bring up this console view again. And now I'm going to actually hit Control A, and I want to make sure I'm in the track panel here. There, Control A, and I'm literally going to bottom out all of the faders to negative infinity, which means nothing is going to be happening. Okay. Now that I've bottomed out all the faders, I'm also going to switch the master bus into mono. I do this right off the bat. That way I don't have to worry about switching back and forth to it later. So why would I switch it to mono? I've discussed this on numerous occasions. You can address phase issues. It helps you to focus on big wins. It also helps you to, at least in my opinion, to understand what instruments are masking other instruments. So I'm going to go ahead and switch this into mono now. I do realize that there are some who say they never mix in mono. There are some who say you should only mix in mono. I'm sort of a middle of the road kind of guy. I mix in mono at the beginning, and then I switch to stereo for the big win. And I'll show you what I mean by that here in just a minute. So now what we're going to do is we're literally going to get a rough mix. So we're going to bring up each element of the mix one by one and get a feel for where it needs to set in the mix. At this point, this is where we're going to try to find out, okay, what's the star of the show in this particular track? Now, in this particular track, because I've already listened to it before, it sounds like, at least to me, that the guitar, of course, I'm a guitarist, I could be one-sided on this, but the guitar, it seems like, is sort of what needs to be the star of the show. So I already know right off the bat that the guitar needs to be a little bit louder, a little bit edgier than everything else. So I'm going to go ahead and start with that. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and loop this. And just by listening through to this before, I kind of already know where I want things to set. So this should go a little bit quicker than usual, just to give you a heads up. Like if you're like, wow, that guy's moving with lightning speed, there's a reason for that, because I've already been acquainted with the material before. So also, I would make mention that normally the guitar tracks would not be in stereo. However, because these were recorded with VSTI instruments, most VSTI instruments are sample-based, and therefore they are stereo recorded. They come as stereo tracks. And a lot of times what you can do is you can zoom in on the waveforms themselves, and you can see that there's an inconsistency from one side of the waveform to the other. As you can see here, if I was to turn this up a little bit and just zoom in. So right here, you can see that the waveforms don't match up identically. Right here, the waveform is a little bit more round and fatter than this side. That means that that is truly a stereo track. So by, leaving that in stereo, I'm completely fine with that. And it is going to have stereo properties. Now, with that being said, in Cakewalk, when it is a stereo track and you pan, you're not actually panning in a stereo field. What you're doing is you're balancing left and right. So there is a difference. If it was a mono track, it would literally be panning right and left. But because it's a stereo track, it's actually balancing right and left. So you're still going to pick up the same signal in the left and right sides of the stereo field. Now you're just balancing the volume of how much you hear them in the right or left speaker, if that makes sense. Okay. I've got it looped now. I simply, and in case you wasn't able to catch that, what I basically did was you hold the control button and you press L, and then that allows you to loop whatever section that you have selected. Now, in this case, I've selected the entire selection, so it will loop the entire song. Which, by the way, Keith, that is a very good point that you brought up. The kick and the bass guitar will be in mono regardless. And we'll get to a little bit more of that here in just a minute. I need to actually go ahead and do that right now. So the bass guitar is always going to be a mono instrument in my personal opinion, just how I That's how I always perceive it. That's how I always mix it. I don't see the need for bass being a stereo instrument unless it's stylistically something you're going for. So what I can do with that when it comes to Cakewalk is I can actually zoom in on this here just to show you. I'm going to right click on this area, and I'm actually going to go to convert to mono here. So literally that's just going to take that track, mix it down, and convert it into mono. And you can also see from the waveform before we just did this, the waveform on the right and left channels looked almost identical anyway. So it was already in, technically speaking, it was already in a mono signal anyway. So it wouldn't have done any good to have that in stereo. The other thing I'm going to do real quickly is I've got these grid lines in front. I want to put them behind. There we go. That looks so much better. Okay, I had them in front, I think, for a tutorial or something. I don't know. Now, the drums, on the other hand, it's a stereo drum track simply because it was a stereo VSTI instrument yet again. So I'm fine with leaving that in stereo because I know, typically speaking, if it's a well-recorded sample, the kick and the snare is already going to be in mono anyway. So I don't have to worry too much about that. All right, so that's really the only track that I'm worried about making sure that it's in mono was the bass track as of right now. So let's go ahead and begin the process of bringing up each fader and just getting sort of a rough mix as it stands. I'm going to go ahead and pull out my master bus here to kind of get a feel for where I stand level-wise. And I'm going to go ahead and insert an instance of, where's it at? Oh, it's under, I'm looking for it under the wrong thing. The TR5 or the T-Rex 5 metering plugin. You don't have to have this metering plugin. There are several free options that are just as good, but this plugin is just, it's a great visual aid for many reasons. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hit play. And because it's all of the faders are brought down, I want to make sure that I am actually playing something. And I am. The playback cursor is moving, so I'm going to go ahead and start bringing up things within the mix. Now, I'm not going to pull up the guitars first, even though these should be the star of the show. I'm actually going to start with, and I always do, the bass and the drums. Okay, so I'm hitting at about -12, -10. That's fine by my standards. I'm going to go ahead and bring this bass up. Okay, I think it's a fairly decent balance there. Okay, now I'm going to slowly start bringing in some of these guitars here. Yeah, that would be a really cool idea, Keith. Okay, so already, this is why it's very imperative that you mix in mono right off the bat, because already I'm starting to hear in these two guitars a little bit of phase issues. I want to make sure that I'm not just hearing things though, so I'm going to solo them out, and I want to take a listen here. Yeah, it definitely sounds like there is. Okay, so the only way to definitively figure out whether or not this is actually taking place is to actually expand these waveforms and just zoom in on them, because when I bring up the correlation meter, it seemed like they were fine. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And it does, in fact, look like, visually speaking, that they are fighting against each other more than they're helping one another. Now, the way that I'm able to ascertain that is the peaks here are fighting against the valleys here. And when you have that, you're going to have some phase cancellation. Now, granted, these are different instruments, and they could be panned right or left, which would help that. However, I'm mixing in mono, and so I need to address it now. So what we should hear whenever I flip the phase on this channel here is it should actually start to sound a little bit better, a little more natural, and you should actually gain a little bit of low end back from the guitars that were lost because of this phase cancellation. Let's go ahead and play this, and hopefully we'll be able to hear this. Let me turn this up for you so you can... Okay, so already when I flip the phase, it seems like they open up just a little bit. Now, it's very subtle, and I'm not even sure if the metering, honestly, will even show this. But I'm going to go ahead and try to get it to show so that hopefully you can see what I'm talking about. I'm going to switch this back to stereo so that you can see the correlation meter and the gain meter here at work. And this basically shows your stereo width within a mix. So I'm going to take this phase inversion off and then turn it on. Okay, yet again, sounds just a little bit more natural, more true to what I think it needs to sound like. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that phase inversion process on. I think it does sound a little bit better. And apparently, Keith says it sounds a touch richer as well. So it's not just my ears. That's good to know. All right, so I'm going to unsolo these again, and we'll go right back into that process. Make sure I'm still in mono. All right, here we go. I'm going to have to default to this again. It sounds as if these acoustic guitars might actually benefit from phase inversion as well. Let's take a listen. Yet again, very subtle, but it's just a tad bit richer, as Keith says. It's got more money in the bank. So we're going to go ahead and go with that. Switch back to mono. So as of right now, we've got no other instruments that are coming in. think that's because I've got something soloed here. There we go. So I'm just bringing them all up to like -6 right now. Okay. Okay. Not sure what I just heard right there. Okay, this is interesting. Okay, right here, it sounded like I heard, it might have just been a glitch from where it was exported. Listen to the drop, and then when it comes back in. Yeah, there was like a boom. It seemed like it jumped. Like it wasn't supposed to do that. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, okay. It sounds like the biggest part of it is heard here in the bass. Okay. Yeah, it looks like there's an extra hit right here that maybe wasn't supposed to be in. I'm going to go ahead and take that out just to see what it sounds like without it. And then move this to where that one was. Oh, too much. But it needs to match up with this choir. So the final hit should actually be there. So, see if I can finagle it. It just sounds wonky either way. Wonky, I say. Yep, okay. Okay, that sounded a little bit better, but then I think the cut that I just made right here confused it. Yeah, it's supposed to be a little bit sooner. A little bit later than that. Okay. Keith has a suggestion here to just move the whole bass portion right here up a tad. And I think you might be right, because it seems like it should come in like right here. I'm not trying to butcher your song, Mark. I'm just trying to, I may even go back to the way it was originally. You got the Control Z feature for that, but I want to hear this real quick. See, it seems like right there is where it should have came in. I don't know, guys. What do you think? I mean, that sounds like to me. That sounds like to me that it's better. Bill Smith. We've got a first-time chatter. Says he's been scoping out the channel for a while. First time in the chat. Well, hey, buddy. Congratulations. It's good to see you in the chat. I actually am very fond of a man whose name was Bill Smith. He's passed away, unfortunately. Super, super nice guy, though. Loved him to death. Just an amazing soul. So that's kind of cool to see your name in the chat. Nice to have you, though, by the way. All right, so everyone agrees then that this sounds better? I think it sounds much better now. Okay, so with that being said, let's go back to where I was hearing, it sounded like when the ukuleles came in, I started hearing some weirdness here in the ukuleles as well. So I'm going to try to figure out where that happened. Okay. Oh, that's right. I'm still in mono here. Okay. All right, now I'm going to bring up the metering again. These look pretty good in stereo, so maybe I'm just hearing stuff. But as you can see with the correlation meter, it's hovering around that 0 and dropping down to -1 every once in a while. So I'm going to go ahead and see if flipping the phase inversion won't help. Okay, let's try that again. I'm just hitting the space bar to replay where I left off here. It looks like actually by flipping the phase, it actually made it worse. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it right where it needs to be. Yeah, it's only dropping down around that -1 just ever so slightly, and honestly some EQ might even clean that up. So I'm not going to worry about the ukuleles. Those actually don't sound too bad. So I think it was just the timbre and the pitch of them that was causing me to think that maybe it sounded as if it was not in phase. So I flipped it back to mono, and here we go again. So far, it seems like the balance is overall, it's there. Okay. so now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to say that's a pretty good starting point for a rough mix. Now, granted, we've got most of these things are just straight across the board. There's not a whole lot that's been done to really balance them out too much other than just volume. So now when we flip this back into stereo, we should hear, sort of roughly speaking, a pretty good balanced volume of the mix as a whole. So let's go ahead and check it out. Not too bad. Not too bad at all. I'm going to go down here and just check out the dynamics. Okay. Okay, so I think we're going to go ahead and start with the next step of this process. And the next step is bringing up each element in the mix, or rather EQing those elements that are stepping on each other until clarity is achieved. So we're at step number 7 of the 15-step mixing process. Like I said, this mixing process does not have to be your mixing process. This mixing process can be, it doesn't have to be done this way every single time even. I mean, you can bounce around if you'd like. This is basically just the process that I use that helps me achieve an end goal in the mix, which, by the way, if you are watching and you have not liked the video as of yet, go ahead and give this video a like. It lets YouTube know that what we're doing here actually means something to some people. So, all right, let's go ahead and check out. Mine involves more coffee. Yeah, I've got coffee today, by the way, after that last colossal blunder. That live stream without the coffee just doesn't work. Everybody said I was low energy. I was coming across as being semi-suicidal and depressed. And it's like, that's not me. So, not that I have to have coffee to be happy, but it certainly helps. It's one of my vices, I guess you could call it. So let's go ahead and start doing the sweetness on this. Still going to make sure that I'm in mono, though. I want to make sure that I'm doing my EQs in mono. Hey, Lolio is here from France. Francois. Good to see you, buddy. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pull up the console view again. Now, I've already done some EQing on the master bus, as well as these were just straight out of the gate settings here. High pass at 20 hertz. Low pass at 20,000 kilohertz, nothing too major. And I've already done some EQ on my, bonsoir, he says, on my reverb buses. And I've also done EQ on my SATI, the saturation. I'm going to start calling it SATI just to throw people off. Only those of you who are here will know. So here's something that's going to be completely crazy for some of you. You're probably going to go, what in the world just happened? But I'm going to do it, okay? I'm going to go to my choir. Actually, I'm going to enable all of these at once. So all of the EQ channels are going to be implemented at one time. As you can see, the console emulation is already being ran all at once. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a high pass filter at 40 hertz on every single track right out of the gate. Okay. And a low pass at 20,000 kilohertz right out of the gate. Now you're probably thinking, why would you do that on every single track? Well, what I've done is essentially save myself a ton of time because these are things that I'm probably going to do on every single track anyway. So the thing about that is I've basically just saved myself a ton of time. On almost every track in this mix, with regards to the bass, I'm probably going to take off 40 hertz or more anyway. So all I'm doing is just sort of a pre-prep for what's coming anyway. So this is the first, very basic, and what this will do is allow me to even hone in more on the elements that are sort of masking one another. So Bill Smith says, how do you feel about EQ presets in the Pro channel? I'm struggling with how much to EQ or not. Presets, I love presets, Bill. It is a great way to get started, and it's a great springboard. It doesn't mean that you have to stay with those presets, but it at least gets you to a certain point. And what I always like to do is, if I'm hunting through those and I find a preset where it sounds pretty darn good, I might just go ahead and leave the preset, and I've saved myself a ton of time from trying to hunt and peck and find. So got no qualms with using the presets in the Pro channel at all. And in fact, if you find a good preset, then obviously you can save that. Now, with that being said, one preset is not going to work for everything. So you can't find an acoustic guitar preset that's going to work on every acoustic guitar, because every source is different. So you have to play it by ear. Just like with anything, when it comes to audio, you have to use your ears by far. That is your most valuable asset. So the first thing I'm going to focus in on are these guitars, because obviously, as I stated earlier, these are going to be the star of the show. So let's go ahead and focus in on these foist. Okay, I have to pause right here to say, yes, Keith, you are correct. And just as I stated, EQ is dependent upon the source. However, if you can get close to what you would do anyway with a preset, you're that much closer, that much quicker. That's all I'm saying. So, but you're right. It is to each their own. So, and like I say all the time on this channel, just because I do it a certain way doesn't mean that that's the way that it has to be done definitively. Everyone has their own workflow, their own style, their own way of doing things. So if you find a way that works for you and you can achieve good results, then go for it. That's what it's all about. All right, so I'm going to start with the guitars. So right off the bat, these guitars are, in my opinion, they're very high mid area. So literally, I'm going to shave off everything below 128. And I'm going to go ahead and listen to the next track. I think it's pretty much the same. Yep. Okay, I'm going to go up to 131. It's close enough. As you can hear, though, let me turn this up for you. This is disabled, enabled. There is hardly any difference, if any at all. And so that's good. That's what I want to hear. That means I'm cutting away stuff that's going to end up muddying up the mix that I don't hear as of right now. And the reason for this is I've spoken about this time and time again as well. So let me pull up this here again and delete this. Just real quickly, I want to show you this. So a bass, oops, I don't want to use blue. I want to use black. Okay, so a bass sine wave is huge. I'm still using blue. It don't matter anyway. This would represent like a bass wave, or a bass, like a sine wave if it was in a bass lower register. And this would represent something that was in a higher register, like higher up on the kilohertz on the EQ spectrum. So because these are bigger, they fill up more space, and the more bass that you get in a mix, and all of a sudden you got all this bass just bouncing all around all over the place. And even if you cannot perceive it at first because it's in the lower registers, as it begins to compound upon each other, then it starts getting noticeable, and you're not even sure where it's coming from anymore. So if you go ahead and eliminate it right off the bat, those areas where you don't hear it, but you know it's there, it kind of takes care of that. And those are my cheesy drawings for today. So, so we're doing that here with these guitars. And then the next thing I'm going to do is a little thing that I like to call complementary EQ. Now, I don't recommend soloing every instrument and EQing it from a soloed standpoint. However, when you're trying to separate two instruments, it definitely helps to do this. So that's what I'm going to do. In this instance, I'm going to say about 6K. Oops. About 6K needs a little bump. And I'm going to set this to, instead of a bell curve, I'm going to set it to a shelf. Yep, that's just bringing out a little bit of that edge. Now, what I am noticing, however, is there's a little bit of wonkiness in there. And it's almost right there. That's crazy. Oh. Yep, there it is. Okay, sounds much better. All right, now, this is what I mean by complementary EQ. So, where I have cut on this side, I'm going to put a small boost on this side. So at 953 on this side, I'm just going to boost just a hair, no more than 3 dBs. And at 65, 62, I'm also going to cut. I'm just going to leave it on a bell, just a hair. Okay. And then I'm actually going to boost a little bit of lows on this because I think they needed it. I'm going to say around 250. Okay, about 3.5. Yes. Very good point, Lolio. Okay, so where I've boosted on this one, I'm going to cut on this one. So at 255, I'm going to make a small cut over here, leave the boost over here. And already you can start to hear there's a little bit more separation and a little bit more clarity added there. So I'm happy with that, at least for now. I'm going to go ahead and move on. Now, it's notable to mention too, I have boosted and I have cut areas on the EQ. So when this is all said and done, I'm still going to have to go back through now because I've literally turned up and turned down frequencies on these that I've already got a rough mix on. I'm going to have to go back and get another rough mix of a balance because I'm adjusting things now in the EQ spectrum. Make sense? I thought it would. All right, let's go ahead. Because this isn't predominantly needed to be in the mix like crazy, it's just going to kind of sit in the back. I'm going to cut at around 150 hertz on this. And typically speaking, on most acoustic guitars, around 250 hertz, when you begin to cut that out, takes away that cardboard boxy sound. Hopefully it'll do that here. There it goes. Now that's quite a significant cut. That's almost 6 dBs, but it needs to be done. And yet again, on this one here, I'm hearing some of that wonkiness. I'm going to turn my Q up on my high mids and just kind of search for it. It's right there. There we go. And I'm going to boost the highs on this at about 3,000. I'm liking the way that sounds. Okay, so let's go ahead and bypass the EQ so that you can hear everything that's been done. So this was before. Okay, this is after. Sounds so much more natural, and I know that's going to fit in the mix a lot better. And if you listen closely, listen to these lows that were there before. You can definitely tell that eventually, over time, that was going to kill this mix. So just a lot of low-end information that really didn't need to be there. All right, let's go ahead and give it a listen. This one actually doesn't sound too bad. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the lows some more. It's very high up in the high mids. I'm okay with going all the way up to 160 on this. I don't hear as much of the wonkiness. I'm still going to go ahead and hunt for it though. If the others had it, this might have it as well. Yeah, it's got a little bit right here. Okay, I like that. There's still a little bit of a something that's happening there. You can almost hear it's like a ringing. It's right there. That's weird. That's right here. I found it. Little booger. Listen. So we're going to turn that down. And I'm going to bring my Q down a little more. Okay. That won't be so noticeable at least. Okay, so check this out. What I'm going to do here, because these sound like almost identical, I'm going to go ahead and copy this EQ spectrum over, and then just simply everywhere where it's boosted, I'll cut. And everywhere it's cut, I'll boost. Except for that resonance. I got to kill that on both of them. Boy, I still hear that. That might even require more. We'll go with the Sonotust EQ here. Like I said, I'm just going to try to use stock stuff here. All right, let's try to find it again here. And wait for it. Wait for it. Here it is. Yeah, that's horrible. That's a little bit more bearable at least. But I have turned it down considerably, so yet again, that's going to have to be rebalanced. Let's go to these Yukis. So obviously on the ukuleles, a lot higher on the spectrum as well. Okay, so this time, yet again, they sound like they're almost identical, and that's because it's Yuki left and Yuki right, so that's fine. But what I am going to do is, I've been taking away more of, yes, it is a Yuki synth. I've been taking away more of the high end from the right side so far of the stereo field, so now I'm going to take it away from the low end, or the left side, just to kind of balance things out a little bit. Okay, that's close enough. Not too shabby. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead, because these are already labeled as such, I'm going to go ahead and pan them left and right. And I'm only going to pan them 70% as of right now. Some people will go full-blown 100. Some people go... However, I only do that with certain things. All right, so these strums, I believe, were the same. I believe it was a strum. Yep. Ah, see, the EQ helped with the phase issues that we was battling before. So now when I inverted the phase again, it sounded better. It came back into where it needed to be. And we are still in mono. So listen to this. By the fact that that low end was introduced back into the track, lets you know that the phase was definitely better. And let's check these lead guitars after we've done that. Make sure I'm actually on the guitars. I think the phase inversion still sounds better on those. All right, so let's move on to the rest of it here. Okay, so I'm hearing this organ. Just a little bit of processing on that bass right now, not too much. Okay, where were these effects coming in? Honestly, I think those might just be all right being left alone. The only thing I am going to do to it is just cut off a lot more of that. Yeah, it's predominantly higher anyway. Just high pass and low pass. Everything else really sounds pretty spot on. Okay. And what was this FX? Something real quick, it looks like. Okay. Cool. I'm literally just going to copy this over. Sounds fine to me. Not going to get too hung up on things. So I got Mark Bergstaller trying to call right now. I don't know if he knows that we're on a live stream. So, oops. Have to call him back here in a minute. He's going to come on the show here in a little bit to talk about his slide guitar class he's having. Super excited about being a part of that. So I'm always willing to learn from anybody, anywhere. And he's definitely got the chops for it. So, all right. The next thing I'm going to go back to is this choir. Oops. Okay. Can shave off a little bit more of that. I heard a little bit of honkiness in there. Now, if you guys aren't hearing exactly what I'm hearing, don't get too distraught about it. For one, YouTube is going to degrade the sound. For two, I've been doing this for years, so there's stuff that I hear that, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but it's just sometimes I'll be doing these things and people are like, I don't even hear that. And then they'll come back later and be like, oh, I heard it after I listened to it 50 times. So Lolio says, do you use the gloss sometimes on the Pro channel? Yes. And I almost used it just a second ago and I thought, no, that's not part of the process, Robert. Stick with the process. I got to keep telling myself. That's actually during the process where I start implementing other plugins other than EQ. But yeah, I love using the gloss. I think it's a great sort of high frequency exciter. All right, where's that wonky I hear? Ooh, I think I caught it. It's right around here. Yep. That sounds a lot more natural. Okay, I'm going to boost up around the 2000 kilohertz. And put that on the shelf. Awesome. I'm happy with that. All right. Okay, cool. So that's all that these drums are doing. And I think it is. I can shave off a lot of that low end here. Yeah, it definitely sounds like it is. Right here would be a good place to use that gloss. And I'm going to go ahead and take the low pass down to about 7,000 kilohertz. I think that's fine. Now, I want to make mention too, a lot of people have seen this before and they're like, what just happened? So when you fold things down to mono, anything that's predominantly dominates the middle, or if it's a mono track or it dominates the center of the channels, it's going to appear at least 3 dBs louder when you fold it down to mono. So it's going to kind of trick your ears a little bit. It takes a little bit to get used to like what the levels should be. So don't get so caught up in getting the levels on everything in mono. After you start making these adjustments, you can make those adjustments after you've done your EQ adjustments in stereo then after that, and it'll make more sense to you. But it doesn't hurt really to switch back to mono every once in a while just to see how things pan out. So with these drums right here, I want to get a little bit of that kick. Sounds pretty nice. I bet we can make it sound better though. There we go. Now we're starting to get somewhere. Okay, so we're still falling at -6. Oh, good question. By the way, Prim J Hands, I think this is your first time commenting. Congratulations for coming out of the woodwork, buddy. Good to see you. So he's got a really good question here, by the way. He wants to know what's the reason for the low pass and boosting again the area that's close to the high shelf. So this is a really good question. So let's take, for instance, on this bass track, because I do it a lot on bass. You'll notice that I've cut everything with a high pass all the way up to 70 hertz, which is unheard of. A lot of people are like, you can't do that. It's a bass guitar. It's supposed to be, you're not even supposed to touch that low end. However, what I have noticed, what seems to work for me, is if you cut all the way up to that point where your fundamental frequency is, and then you boost right after that cut, it's almost like some sort of tomfoolery, some sort of trickery, where it gives you all of the resonance and the oomph and the punch of that fundamental frequency without all of the mud. So, and the same thing happens here in the higher registers, where you do a low pass, all the way up to, on this, I've got it all the way up to 3000 kilohertz, which is kind of steep. But then where I've boosted at 1600, which is half of that, it's literally giving me the high end of the bass that I need and cutting out all of the other stuff that I don't. So that's definitely a great question, one worth asking. So thanks for actually bringing that up. But literally, that's exactly why I do that. So it's not one of those things that is real perceivable. It's not one of those things that's really everyone does. It's not one of those things that when you start doing it at first, you hear. But when you apply this, like I've said earlier, because those frequencies begin to stack over top of one another, when you start to apply these little methods across the board on all of these different tracks, then suddenly it starts making sense. And you start realizing, wow, my mix has just got really cleaned up. It's not muddy anymore. And it's because you've taken care of all those low end frequencies that are stacking on top of each other. So great question, man. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and do some real quick panning, just sort of off the cuff here, because I know like ukulele left and right, that's obviously going to be left and right. And then I'm just going to real quickly just kind of go through here. And I can always change this, but I'm just going to go 50% left on this acoustic guitar here. And if I remember correctly, they're kind of identical. So I'll go 50% right on this one. Exactly. Exactly, Mark. Okay, and then I always like my organ kind of panned a little bit to the right. That's just me. Not too much, but just a little bit. So I'm going to send it off about 30% to the right. And then this contact here. I need to find out what exactly that was doing. Oh, it's this right here. Oh, cool. That's where I was hearing that. I thought I heard that a minute ago. I was like, what in the world? No, you don't always have to use a shelf. I just prefer to use a shelf because for me personally, it just sounds better. And also, I don't know, it just seems like it rounds things off. So the good thing about the Pro Channel EQ is, which not a lot of people know this, but the Pro Channel EQ is actually a linear EQ. So it actually helps to address phase issues. Like if you were just using any old EQ, sometimes when you EQ two elements together, you can actually introduce more phase issues because the EQ is not a linear EQ, but this is actually a linear EQ. So, which is why I guess it's called the Pro Channel, because it's for pros. So with this one here, it's got a lot of low end information. I'm going to go ahead and cut, but I also hear some things that, some more areas I'd like to cut. Right there. I don't mind that low end information being there, but I am going to cut some of it. pan that just a little bit to the left. Okay. Bass is always going to stay right up the middle for me. I don't ever pan my bass off in some crazy areas. With these drums, because it's a stereo track, I'm just going to leave it straight up the center. And because it's a stereo track, it'll go where it needs to go. And then the rest of this is just going to be sweetening up with some further plugins and synths. So I think right now, honestly, other than this one extra EQ that we implemented to take care of those resonances, I think it's really at a really good point to go ahead and start getting the balances of the levels back now that we've done some EQ work. So I'm going to kind of do that right now. Okay. Got some more instruments coming in now. Like my cup. Those toms sound really cool. So far, so good. Okay. Here comes the power chords. Good, good. So far, so good. Now remember, we're still in mono. Here in a minute, we're gonna fold this back out to stereo, and we're gonna get that beautiful payoff from all this hard work. Here comes the payoff. Nice. Sounds rich, sounds full, got a lot of stereo depth to it. It sounds clear. It sounds nice. And we've not even done anything but EQ so far. So now let's begin sweetening it up with just a few more plugins. And I think we're already on our way to a really nice mix here right out of the gate. So this is all partly due to, really a lot of this, honestly, is due to the fact that it's just got a really good arrangement. So when it has a really good arrangement, everything just fits well together. The one area that I noticed here is the nylon guitar and this guitar here. It's not really touched. And because it's nylon, I can already assume that I can go up a little bit higher on my high pass. Need to go back and check these out real quick just to make sure I didn't miss something here. Here they are. Okay. I'm going to do these hard left and right. Nice. Sounds good. Sounds real good. Okay, good deal. Now let's start sweetening this bad boy up with some reverbs and some saturation. Love my saturation. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to slap a reverb on this bad boy because it is the guitar. Not effects, send. Okay, actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take this off. And I'm going to go right down the middle here, except for the bass. Hold the control button and insert a reverb short send. Hold the control button, reverb medium. Hold the control button, reverb long. Hold the control button. I'm not going to send them all to saturation. Okay, so with that being said, I'm going to bring the send level to the short all the way down, medium level all the way down, long level all the way down. And literally, I'm going to blend this in as it's being played, which is going to give me really good sound. Now on this here, I'm only going to insert a long because it's the choir. It only really needs that long reverb anyway. Bass doesn't need it. On these here, I'm going to do the exact same thing. So, the cool thing about doing it this way too is I'm not married to this. Like I don't have to stick with this at all, but I have these options already open to me and they're super easy to implement. I don't have to implement 16 different plugins with different settings, I can just simply go through here and just do exactly what I want. So I'm going to start off with this guitar, and I'm mainly soloing this out right now just to get a sound of the reverb itself. I just want to hear what the reverb sounds like in context with this instrument. So I'm going to slowly start bringing up the short, and then I'll work my way down with the medium and long. That sounds pretty typical. I'm going to back it off to -5, and I'm going to bring the reverb up. Now, when I'm doing this, I'm over-accentuating these. So I'm bringing the reverb up all the way because I want to hear exactly what it's doing, and then I'll bring it down to something more manageable. Or not manageable, but just listenable. Okay, I like that. So now that I know what they sound like in context with one of these instruments, I kind of got a feel for how they're going to sound like with the rest of them, just in the sense of what kind of space they're going to add to. Now, you notice with the short, it's almost like a slap delay or like a plate delay, which is great. That's exactly what I wanted. The medium sounded sort of like a room, maybe a room much like the size that I'm in now. And the long sounded a little bit lacking of what I wanted the long reverb to sound like, but I'm going to listen to it in context with the mix first before I start adjusting how big that room is. And what I'm going to do is literally just go through here and start moving these just by feel. So I'm going to unsolo this now and just start adding some reverb all over the place, making these set cohesively in a space. Now, back to the drawing that we had a minute ago, which is gone. I forgot I took that off there. Anyway, if you were here earlier, you know that I had a little drawing of, a little band and them playing on a stage and the reverbs. So yet again, all I'm trying to do is create the space. And if I want something to fall back in the mix, acoustically and psychoacoustically, what I can do is add more of the long plate or the long reverb tails. And if I want it to be a little bit more present, I just simply take off that long reverb and allow it to be brought more to the forward front. And what this does is just psychoacoustically, when we hear something that sounds like it's in a bigger room, it appears to our ears and to our minds that it's farther away. And if we hear it up closer and it has less reverb, it's more dry, it appears then that it's closer. So that's how I'm going to actually use this to sort of balance things now with the reverb sends. So I've balanced them with the EQ. Now we're going to balance them with the reverbs. Which, by the way, if any of this is helpful, please let me know that in the chat section right now. What's some aha moments that you're already getting from this right now? What's something that you've already learned today that you're like, wow, I'm going to take away and I'm going to use this on my mixes? I'd like to know that while I'm making these changes right now. And by the way, you're always free to use the super chat feature. Had to get it in there. If you have a super chat donation of $1 or more or any amount, I'll give you a freebie right after this live stream. All you'll have to do is just contact me and I'll send you something free. So Keith Lane says, I did wonder what that was. I tuned in thinking I had the ping pong masterclass channel. No, that was a drawing I had. Just never mind. Go back and watch it, Keith. You'll figure it out. Thanks for sticking around, though, even though you did think it was the master class for the ping pong channel. Maybe you thought I would change my channel. All right, so after the shameless super chat plug, I'm going to go ahead and get right now into there. This right now, to be honest, it makes the sound so much more natural. Awesome. That's what we're headed for. All right, so I'm literally going to play this, and we are just going to, by feel, by nature, by ear, we're just going to start adding in some reverb here. Oops. Let me take that off there. There we go. It's really coming along already. Sounding good, sounding real good. Oh yeah. Nice. Sounding really good. Man, I am telling you what, guys, this is just, it's coming together nicely. Okay, so I wanted to explain what I'm doing here on the, hey, Genal, nice to see you. It's been a while since she's been here. Let's give her a round of applause. All right. So I wanted to explain to you guys something that I'm doing right now that a lot of people have asked in times past. What are you doing right there? So you'll notice on channels where I've got the panning to the left, I'm panning the send to the right, and vice versa. And what this does is it expands your sound and it gives you a wider stereo field, from what I understand, at least from what I can hear. Let me solo this track here just to kind of give you an example of this. Okay. Now, if I was to have these in the center, it doesn't sound bad, but it just sounds so much richer, so much fuller when I pan these. See how it just kind of went 3D? Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is one of my favorite things in the whole world is saturation. I love saturation. It's my favorite effect. I use it all the time. Oh, I haven't even touched the reverb on these yet. And they definitely need it too, because I heard some areas. And because these are just one-shot effects, I don't have to worry too much about the levels of them at all. I'm just going to kind of send them there and let them set. I know I want to take off some of the short reverbs. And then in these drums, I definitely want to work on these drums a little bit. They already sound like they had some reverb baked into them, but I want to add just a little bit more. was hearing. That's better. Oh, yeah. Hey, Jurgen. Nice to see you, buddy. All right. So now that I've got the reverb on the drums like I liked, I think we can move on now to the saturation. So to answer your question, Mark, saturation is an amazing, amazing tool in the sense that saturation will add rich harmonics and give the perceived loudness of a track without really adding volume. And what I mean by that is it takes the fundamental frequencies of that track and it gives you, because it's saturated, much like distortion, it gives you harmonics of those frequencies that are fundamental to that track. So literally what it can do is almost collar it to the sense of making it just set on top of the mix a little bit better to make it just kind of poke out a little bit more. And I'm not going to use it on everything in the mix because some things you don't really want to be up front and present. But there are other elements of the mix where you want to kind of push it back, but yet still let it to be heard. The bass guitar is an excellent example of that, and we're going to see that now. But before we do that, I'm going to check real quick. Awesome. We got 17 viewers and 15 likes. We only need 2 more likes to equal the amount of viewers that we got. So give us a couple more likes, guys. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about some of the saturation. And the other thing we're going to do right off the bat with this bass guitar, I do it every single time, is I always put, where's it at? A limiter on it. Now I'm going to use the CA2A. You do not have access to this if you're a first-time Cakewalk user. So actually what I might do, just to make sure that I'm using plugins that you do have access to, I will actually go and I'll just use a stock because it doesn't matter which one it is. Oh, there it was. So I can either use the Sonatus compressor or I can use the Sonatus multiband. In this instance, I'm just going to go ahead and just use the Sonatus compressor as everybody has access to this. And you have a little switch right here, if I can spit it out, that says limiter. I'm going to select that to on. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to adjust this to where Zave says, can you saturate just certain frequencies? Yes. Yes, you certainly can. And there's different ways to do that. But the way that I'm going to be using it today, because I'm only sending certain things to that saturation bus, I'm going to send the entire signal there. But yes, you can saturate only certain frequencies. In fact, a good way to do that is to use the aux sends that you have. Just create an aux channel where you're only... He's typing with one finger. That makes sense. Okay. As long as you're not 3 sheets in the wind already. I don't know what time it is there, but here it's only 4:30. So, all right. So we're going to go ahead and listen to this real quick. I'm going to set my ratio at about 6, close to it. Let me go back to where the bass is actually playing. Okay. want a pretty good release time. I don't want it to be lingering down there too long. I want it to rise with the music. So now, if you remember correctly, we've already done our homework on its 80 BPMs, which we went and mapped it off the drums. It was 654 roughly milliseconds. So close to 70 milliseconds actually should be about right for it to actually breathe with the music. So now all I got to do is set the threshold, and I should be well off. Bill, you don't have to necessarily do that, but if you've learned something here that you think you can apply to your mix, that's awesome. Okay. I'm looking at roughly like 6 dBs of gain reduction. That's pretty close right there. Now I'm going to use my makeup gain to add that gain reduction back. And what that's going to do is basically give me a very solid bass line, something that's not going to have to be automated really. It's just going to kind of flow with the mix. All the dynamics of the bass is just going to be a solid backbone to the rest of the mix. Okay, now I'm going to have to adjust my level, just fine. Now what you'll notice is that gave it a little bit more punch. Now I'm going to insert a send to my SATI channel. Now not only does it have the punch, but now it's going to gain grit. And I want to make sure that the saturation channel is in fact working properly. See, for some reason here lately, the saturation knob keeps getting turned down to 0, even if I turn it up all the way. Like as soon as I click away from this, it'll go back to 0. It's weird. Okay. Lolio, you're crazy. Okay. Now I'm just going to adjust the bass level on that again. Okay, so that's allowing the bass to really poke through there. It still has it consistent. The low end is still there. You can hear that there's a bass guitar present. And with a saturation involved, it's also going to make it more easily to be heard on smaller speakers. And there it did it again. See, I'm not lying. Okay, I'm gonna have to contact Cakewalk or find out if other people are experiencing this. But until then, I'll just use a good old fashioned. Where is it? Where's the saturation little doodad that we got here? That comes stock. There it is. Tube saturation. Same difference. I'll just use it. There we go. Does the same thing anyway. Nice. if you notice, I have turned that bass down now considerably from where it was, yet it still sounds just as present, sounds just as punchy. That is due in part to the limiter, yes, but that's also due in part to that saturation, yet again, adding those harmonics. So because the sort of star of the show in this are the guitars, I'm going to go ahead and add them to the SATI channel as well. I'm just going to turn them down considerably. Probably, I bet negative 6 dBs will be fine. I will listen to it in context with the mix. I'm not just going to set it and forget it. And with these, I'm not actually going to pan these. I'm just going to leave them straight up the center because it's not a time-based effect like reverb is. Now listen to how much more present this gets when I implement it. It's more up front. Nice. I like it. It's really coming together, man. I'm liking it. Okay. All right, so far, I think we've got this song to a really, really good point. So going forward from here, the main thing that I would do as the mix engineer, which I will do, is just a little bit of automation. And by automation, all I mean is simply just at certain parts, I will accentuate certain elements of the mix. Like say, for instance, the bass runs or different areas of the bass will be just automated in volume, brought up, 1 to 2 dBs here or there, and then just randomly, just all over the board, I'm going to automate different things. That's one of the secrets of a good mix, is automating and taking that time to painstakingly go into almost with like a microscope and find the areas in that mix that really just need to come to life and just automate them ever so slightly. You can do that with panning. You can do that with delays and reverb sends, send more of it to a reverb and then pull it back to where it was. There's so many things that you can do with automation. The main thing that I want to drive home right now, though, is the fact that we have used stock plugins, except for the metering plugin, which you can use any kind of metering plugin you want to use. But we have used nothing but stock plugins and we've only used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plugins, 6 if you count the metering plugin total, to get this mix to the place that it's at now. So 5 plugins total, balancing it, using sends, using EQ, using saturation. So 7, I should say, total, if we count the saturation. That's insane. And that's what years of experience can gain for you, yes, but also that's what I'm trying to teach you here on the channel. As I'm trying to help you to get to that point where you don't have to spend thousands of dollars on plugins anymore to get a good sounding mix. Now, are there plugins that cost a lot of money that are worth it? Yes. However, are there plugins that you have at your disposal right now that can do the exact same thing? I really believe so. There's only a very few plugins that I've ever purchased that I thought I really have to have. One of those being the Golfos. That is a plugin that, unlike a lot of other EQs, it does things, so many different things on the backside, on the inside, and the inner workings of the plugin itself, that you would have to implement 5 or 6 different plugins to get it to do anyway, that it's just easier to have the one. So yes, there are certain plugins that I would definitely run and say, yes, if you can afford it, get it. It's worth it. However, 9 times out of 10, using the plugins that you have, just stock plugins, you can get to a place like we're at right now. And just to further drive this point home, let's go ahead and listen to this mix before and after, okay? Cool way that you can do this on Cakewalk is this bypass all effects button. So what this is literally going to do is take us back to the very base point that we started on, square one, okay? And this is going to let us hear what the mix sounded like before we made any of these changes. And then I will take this off and you'll hear the changes being made. So get ready for a huge payoff. Doesn't sound bad. Ready? Okay, so this is kind of subjective. It's kind of tricky because it gets louder when I take the effects off, because in all actuality, the effects that I'm implementing, I'm doing a lot more cutting than I am boosting. So we have to take that into account. The best way to do this would be to volume match that. However, I'll try to do that as best as I can with the slider here, and hopefully we'll get to a little bit better example. So here's before. And here's after. Before. Nice. So one thing that I did pick up on, I didn't much care for the snare sound after making those A/B tests. And that's why it's awesome to have that little FX button there, because you can kind of get a gauge as to where you started and where you are now. So because I didn't like that snare sound, then I can go through and say, okay, well, what was it that I didn't like about the snare? So for me, the snare lost sort of its punch. So I'm going to go to this drum track and I'm going to literally just find out what I need to do to bring that punch back. And I think it has to do with the reverbs. Yep. There it was. All right. Now let's check it out in mono. So even in mono, it sounds pretty stinking decent, which lets me know that there's a lot of good phase relationships going on here and everything is pretty much on the up and up. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and remove the metering here on the master bus, and without doing the major, that's a good question, Bill. So does compression need to be used? Absolutely. I've already used some on the bass guitar, and you've seen how that tamed those transients. So because we're already going on, I don't even know how long we've been streaming now. It's probably been like an eternity. Let me check real quick. That can't be right. Wow. Okay. We've already been on here almost 2 hours. So, wow. That's a lot of time. Well, with that being said, it would take me quite a bit of time to go through here and adjust that. However, I can tell you that one area that I would definitely use the compression on would be these guitars here. And I would probably use a little bit more compression on the acoustic guitars just to tame the transients as well. So with that being said, honestly, I think I could probably dial those in real quick just to kind of show you, if that's all right, if you guys got time. So I'll go to the effects bin here, and we'll just use the same Sonotest compressor that everybody has. Okay. Now, generally speaking, on these guitars, what I want is a slower attack time, a quicker release time. What that's going to do is allow the transients to go through, but yet tame those sort of droned out, not necessarily droned, but the longer tail of the attack. So I'm going to go with like we'll just start with like a 37, and I'll bring the release down to about 60, somewhere around there. Okay. I'm actually kind of liking the way that sounds right there. Okay, so on the acoustic guitars, I'm adding the tack time is a little bit longer. That way it takes care of more of that reverby, boxy sound you get from the guitar. And it's allowing more of the transients through. And because it's sort of a strummed, it's allowing more of that strum to sound natural and not choking it out. And then the release is actually pretty low as well to allow it to just sort of breathe. And we're within that same ballpark, the 66 milliseconds, as what would be for this song to really have its breathing room anyway. Now, if you remember correctly, it was like 642 milliseconds or something crazy like that. But you really got to play this by ear. So I'm going to go ahead and what I was doing here just a minute ago was literally just, you hold the control button and you can click and drag and you'll get that on those tracks there. That sounds good right about there. I'm going to try to get about 3 dBs of gain reduction. Sounds good. Bon Gonzo, what's up, buddy? I'm good, man. It's nice to see you, man. Okay, so I'm going to be using that compressor mainly on the tracks that have a lot of the attack. So on the organ, I don't necessarily need that. Now, the thing about, I was just getting ready to ask, how's your computer, man? Are you back up and running? Because I was wondering about that. Nice. Good deal. So yeah, I definitely agree with you about the snap on that snare. I'm not liking how that snare is sounding right now. In fact, I was getting ready to address that. And I think I will. I'll just use an EQ here real quick. There we go. That brought her back. Much better. So that's really the main things that I would be using on the compressor on. And I just showed you sort of some really quick ways to dial that in. I'll just show you here. This is probably one of the easiest ways that I can explain it. And I have to say, of all the times that I have explained it this way, I've gotten people as like, dude, I finally understand compression. So hopefully this will be like that for you. So literally, let me get my little pencil out here. So literally, you have a waveform and you're wanting to compress that waveform. Okay. So the compression, your threshold tells the compressor when to kick in. So like, let's say this is your threshold. It's not going to be doing anything to that signal. However, if I was to set the threshold down here, then it's going to be only compressing or turning down that waveform when it crosses that threshold. So only these peaks right here would be affected by the compressor. Now, here's the other aspect of that. So let's say, for instance, I have a waveform that looks something like that. Is a horrible waveform. Let's say I have a waveform. I'm trying to make it. okay, that looks like this. So let's say it's a snare hit, okay? And let's say the transient, the big peak transient is right here, and then it kind of trails off like most snares do right here, okay? Stick with me. Now, if I have my threshold or my attack time set fast, it's going to cut this off. And if I have my release time set slow, it's going to allow it to raise back up. Now, all your compressor doing is literally just turning something down. Okay. Well, it was good seeing you, Bongonzo. Have a good one. And for the PC that we lost. Okay. So if you have a fast attack time, you're going to be cutting off that initial transient quickly because that compressor is going to react faster. The attack time says, whoa, something happened. And a slow release time says, okay, you can gradually let that volume level come back. So in this instance, what you'd basically, oh, you lost the drive. Ooh, that's even worse. As long as you recovered the files. Oh, yeah. So with that being said, the fast attack time will cut off this transient and allow just the tail end of the snare, the wah, to come through. So it'll be like, instead of like a pop, it'll be like a, I'm horrible at sound effects, but anyway, now let's say I did a slow attack, fast release, or slow attack, slow release. So it would look more like this. Okay, so I would cut off the initial transient just a little bit and slowly release back into it. Okay, so fast attack, cutting off the transient, slow attack, cutting off mainly back here. So it doesn't start enacting until here. And then your release is just based off of how you want the ambience or the room or the reverb tail or the woody sound of the acoustic guitar after it's been strummed once to come out. If it's a fast release, you're going to get more of that. If you have a slow release, you're going to actually be able to tame that. Hope that makes sense. Usually when I explain it to people like that, they're like, oh, that makes total sense now. So, all right. So yet again, we're running into a lot of time here, but I want to show you, we've just used a handful of plugins. Yeah, it works for you because of what you're working with. Excellent job, by the way, man. Your channel is growing. I love to see you going places. You're an awesome individual. If you guys have not checked out Bongonzo's channel, go and check him out. He's got some awesome tutorials for beat making. Go and check him out. Jurgen, it was good having you, buddy. I hope that you can come back and join us. And I'm not sure what time it is there. So, but it's getting close to Chick-fil-A time here. Oh, yes. Chick-fil-A. So with that being said, we've used just a handful of plugins, stock plugins. We have got this mix to a place where I feel like it's light years better than it was. Let's go ahead and do the 11 p.m. Wow. So Lolio says, if I well understood, fast attack kills the dynamic of a percussive instrument. Yes. It can also tame plucky sounds of an acoustic guitar. So if you have an acoustic guitar that's a little too plucky, you can set a fast attack, slow release, and you'll get still the body of the guitar, but kill kind of the pluck of the guitar. All it essentially is like having a stagehand or a mix engineer working alongside of you who's literally like paying attention to those waveforms. And whenever he sees a spike, he turns it down and then slowly back up. So that would be a fast attack, slow release. And then if you have it set opposite, it would be a slow attack. So he's a little slow on the intake. He sees it and he goes, oh, I got to turn that down. And then the fast release would be, whoop, turning it back up. So it's all a mindset of how you look at it. People try to mystify it, make it way too crazy. It doesn't have to be that. It can be simplified. Imagine that. Okay, so once again, let's listen to this real quick before and after, and I'll try to level match it again. This is before. And after. Sorry. I am not liking the way that snare sounds at all. I'm going to have to pause and check out the snare. And it very well could be one of these reverb sends I'm not liking here. Let me check it. Yep. So in this case, I'm just going to use the medium reverb because it actually sounds better. And I know sometimes Cakewalk also does this thing where if you switch back and forth between plugins or you try to bypass things, sometimes it'll get wonky. Hopefully that's not the case. I'm going to go ahead and go back to, so this will be the before. See, I like the snare in that sound. Okay, after. I think it's just being wonky because if I stop it, there we go. Okay, so I got a quick idea here to get the best, most accurate representation. I'm going to send this as no FX to the desktop here. And I just sent only those 2 tracks. That was glorious. You guys are awesome, by the way, for sticking it out this long. I don't know who's got more tenacity right now. Me for putting all this on, or you guys for sitting here watching me fumble and bumble around for half this. Merch available in the store. Andre. Yeah, it does. And that's why I'm hoping I can bypass that by going with this here. And it very well could have phase addressed, or rather introduced to it simply because I got the reverbs on there. And the reverb is a time-based effect. And like I already said earlier, it sounded like there was some reverb baked into it. So I might just end up taking the reverb completely off. And it might even sit better in the mix. I don't know. So I'm going to go ahead and export this now as with FX. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to export one version without effects, one version with effects, bring them both into the project so I can solo back and forth between them instead of bypassing and enabling plugins, because sometimes Cakewalk gets a little wonky on that because there's a whole lot of processing that has to go on for that one little button push. So to sort of bypass that, I'm going to bypass that. So Andre, I believe this is your first time I've ever seen you comment. So congratulations. It's good to see you come out of the woodwork. Nice to see you here on the channel and commenting. And thank you, by the way, for addressing that, because that's the exact same thing that was going through my head and why I couldn't figure out. I was like, I don't like that snare sound whenever it's enabled, and that's part of it. So always good to see those smiley faces up in here. You guys are awesome with the emojis, by the way. And the last time I checked, we actually had the same amount of likes as we do viewers, which is really cool. Yeah, awesome. You guys are awesome. Now, we actually have more likes than we have viewers now. I don't know how you guys are doing it, but that's awesome. Okay, so now we've got all of the tracks exported with effects and without effects. I'm going to hold the shift button now that these are all selected and just, what am I thinking? Collapse one, and that will collapse them all. Now I've held the control button and muted one, which will mute them all. And now I'm simply just going to insert an audio track. Go back to the beginning here. And import audio from the desktop. This top one will be the no effects. And the bottom one will be with effects. This will probably give us a better representation anyway, because then I can volume match them a little better. A little more gooder. Should be a little more gooder. Okay. So let's see where this is setting at on the levels. About -5. There we go. Yeah, it definitely was. The drums are definitely getting mangled. And it's got to be by that reverb. That's the only thing I can think of. So let's take the reverb off, and from there, that should get us to a point where the drums should set better. Now the saturation seemed like it actually did something for it, so I'm going to leave that like it stands. Yeah, that brought it back. Brought it back to life. That means I can probably take that back down. And I think what we're going to do now to make these drums pop a little bit more and to get that snare to poke out a little bit more, we're going to do some good old parallel compression. We're going to call this drums PC for drums parallel compression. And we're going to make sure that the out is set to master and the out set to, I'm going to send this to the drums, PC. There we go. So literally all I'm doing with the parallel compression right now is just, I'm sending the drums to this compressor here that's literally like crushing the drums to smithereens, and then I'm just blending it back in with the drum signal. So this is literally all that's being added. And that's the snap of the drum that I'm missing, so I'm adding it back in this way. And I'll just blend that to taste. So this is none. Slowly bring it up. Without, with. A lot more punch. Okay. All right, one more time, we're going to do the effects, no effects thing here. And let me... Now, as with anything, it's definitely going to require some tweakage. However, I think in light of the stereo field, in light of the way things are balanced, honestly, I think that the mix has definitely benefited from this. It didn't sound bad to begin with. It was very well arranged. It had a really good feel to it, really good vibe. So I don't think it's, you know, taking it from like here to here. It was more like taking it from here to here. And a lot of this will be picked up on, especially in smaller stereos or in headphones. Depending on where you're listening to, you may not be able to pick up on a lot of what's been done. So I would definitely suggest listening to this on headphones or some kind of nice reference monitors where you can hear these differences that are being made. Let me know in the chat what you think of the mix so far. Did I make it better? Did I make it worse? Be completely honest. You're not going to hurt my feelings. And then maybe add a little dialogue there as to what you would like to do with the mix. Thanks, Lolio. I appreciate that. Okay, so now let's listen to these again, now that I've adjusted that snare. So this is the original. I think they're still volume matched. This was the before. Like I said, it doesn't sound bad. It's just lacking a little bit of clarity that I think it needs. Zave, it was really good seeing you on here, man. Been missing your face around here. So guys, I hope this was helpful. I hope it serves some kind of a usefulness in some way, shape, or form. Mark, I will get the rest of this taken care of later tonight, the automation and various things that need to be done to it to really get it to that point where I'm happy with going ahead and saying, yes, it's finished. And then I will send that to you for critique, and then you can send me back some revisions as to what you would like done to it, or if it's fine, we can go from there. He has already agreed to allow me to put this on the other channel, Mockingbird Studio channel. If you did not know, I do have another channel that's called Mockingbird Studio where I will showcase your work from time to time. This is definitely one that I will showcase on there, as it is an instrumental track, which is what Mockingbird Studio's channel is mainly going to be focused on. And then from there, I'll just give it a quick master if you like it. And maybe we'll go through the mastering portion of this too. It's yet again, it's nothing too crazy. And then we'll kind of go from there. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. If you did, make sure to try and support the channel in some way, shape, or form. I know that Mark is a Patreon member. I know that Zave is a Patreon member. There is other individuals who have helped through super chats in times past. This is time out of my day to try and help you guys. Just keep that in mind. I don't mind doing it. I love helping you guys, but at the same time, time is money. And this was almost 2.5 hours. So if you learned something from this, try to give back in some way, shape, or form. And I would definitely recommend, especially now more than ever, you need to go over and check out the Patreon page, because I'm getting ready to release the most in-depth Cakewalk tutorial course that I've ever done. It's going to have multi-tracks that you can add to your portfolio. And you're going to be able to follow along with me on the screen as I mix that one as well. And we're going to bring that to a point where it's going to be radio ready. We're going to master it together. It's going to be mixable. You can add it to your portfolio. And if you jump in at even $5 a month right now on the Patreon page, you're going to get a dramatic discount. And I do mean dramatic discount on that whenever it releases. So thank you, each and every one of you, for showing up today. Remember that this channel exists to simplify the complexities of the home studio and to help you make professional sounding music in a less than professional space. We can dream alone. We can create alone. But together, we can achieve so much more. God bless each and every one of you. Love you all.